it started in January. I would like wake up in the morning and I wouldn't feel tired. Like I'd feel awake, but like I just couldn't get out of bed. Like my body was just too tired. I would just go back to sleep. And I was planning to go back to the doctors for it. I was like, maybe it could be my iron levels, you know, like I started feeling really nauseous. I would wake up in the morning, I'd be coughing, it'd be making me urge, I'd be rushing to the toilet, and I wasn't being sick, but I was like, after I would eat as well, I would just feel so sick, and I was like, I don't know what's happening. Like I was getting really bloated. I put it down originally to IBS. I was like, it must just be IBS, like, or maybe I'm just getting fat. Like I've eaten a lot over Christmas, I've eaten a lot of junk, I've had like a lot of alcohol, like New Year, but the bloating just kept getting worse. I was getting these really severe cramps. I'd be fine and all of a sudden I'd get a really severe cramp. It would last sometimes a few minutes, sometimes up to an hour. They would come and go. This would happen a few times a week, occasionally a couple times a day. End of February time, I was like, okay, I'm going to take the pregnancy test because it wasn't right. Like I was getting a lot of like vaginal cramps as well. TMI, I'm so sorry. But I was like, I'm just going to take one. Took one, it was negative. The next day I started bleeding, and that's weird for me because I hadn't had my period in a year and a half. I have the implant, so I don't get periods. It just stops them completely. I bled for a few days and it stopped, and then I bled for a few days again and it stopped for a few days, and then I bled for a week. I was like, okay, I'm gonna call the doctors. I called the doctors. I explained that I was having all these pregnancy symptoms, but you know, a negative pregnancy test. I'd taken multiple by this point. So the doctor called me back later that day, and they were like, oh, could it be your B12 that could be affecting your body? And I was like, I don't have a B12. And they're like, oh, but it's on your record that you should. And I'm like, well, I've never had one. Like, I don't think it's that. So they were like, okay, come in, some swabs, we'll do blood tests, and we'll do another pregnancy test just to make sure. And I was like, okay. So she did all that. It took a week to get my results. By this point, like, it was hurting me to stand for long periods of time. And yeah, they called me back. They were like, your blood tests are clear, like, you're fine. And so I was like, well, the doctor said that I might need a B12, so could it be that? They were like, no, your blood tests all came back clear, like, your B12 levels are fine. And I was like, oh, okay. I said, can I book in for another appointment then? Because, you know, something's still wrong with me. And they were like, yeah, we'll get the doctor to, like, give you a call back. So the doctor called back and said, come in for an appointment. We'll, you know, get the doctor to, like, have a feel of your stomach and just see what they think could be wrong. They had a feel of my stomach and they were like, okay, so if it wasn't for your negative pregnancy tests, we'd think you were pregnant. And I was like, right, okay, but I have had negative pregnancies. I've had my period. They were like, yeah, but sometimes that can still happen. I was like, right, okay, so we'll get you in for an ultrasound. And originally they wanted me to wait 5 weeks. And I was like, no, you're all right. I'm not waiting that long. Like, that's ridiculous. So I called the doctor back up and I said, like, look, I can't wait 5 weeks. But by this point, I was, like, bedridden most of the time. So they were like, okay, we'll get you in for a week and a half. So I was like, okay. Went to my ultrasound and she was like, oh, you have a large cyst on your right ovary. So I like got dressed and I was like, so like how big is it? And she was like, oh, it's big. And I was like, okay, but how big? Like I needed to know. And she was like, oh, it's 18 centimeters. And then I thought about it and I was like, that's like 7 inches. Like that's pretty big. And then I googled it and it was like, oh, anything over like 10 centimeters is considered like giant. And I was like, jeez, like I wasn't that big at that point. Like I probably looked a few months pregnant. Like my stomach was solid, but like it wasn't huge.